Copilot Studio has a whole new way to build. So today we're just going to jump in there and I'm going to go through with you how to build in this new manner, what all the different pieces are, and why you should really be excited because I think it's a big change. Also, as a little bonus, I'm going to tell you how this is now fitting into what I've been thinking about with Cowork, and I think it solves one of my big challenges. If that sounds like fun, then let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. All right, let's start over here at copilotstudio.microsoft.com, right? The same interface you've had for a really long time. So now what you should have option for here though is to click on try now, right? So try the new experience. So if you click this, it is going to reload the page and it should look completely different. So if you're seeing this look, woohoo, you have access to the new agent, which it's one GA, so it should be capable. Now note over here, you've got the little new experience. So if you want to go back, you can, and that's important, right? As we think about these agents, we're going to build today on this new harness, right? It's just their fancy way of saying, hey, this thing is different fundamentally under the hood than the old way. And you're going to see there's a lot of features that are not there, or not there is wrong, right? There's a different way of doing the thing. So, but if at any point you want to go back to work on one of the old agents, then you just hit this. And once you hit this, you're just going to tell it why you want to go back. And I mean, I just don't do anything. I hit submit. And it'll switch you over there, right? So you are today going to have to kind of make a choice to go from one to the other. Now, once you're over here though, if we want to create an agent, right, we're going to click on agent here. And here's the entire build studio, right? There's nothing more. You know, if you think about the other one, we've got screens and tabs and places to jump. Like it's all right here, right? It's a much more simplified building experience. Doesn't mean that it does less, it actually does more, but that is worth noting, right? So first up here, might just give it a quick name, like, I don't know, demo agent, right? We're not trying to build anything specifically. Today's really about functionality. Hidden right here, I think it's hidden. If you want to change the icon, you've got to click, here. And so you can either do that, or you could upload a icon. How about good old buddy looking right there? All right, and so we can apply. I only point that out because I missed that the first couple times and the product team had to tell me where it was. So I want you to know. Okay. So they have instructions, but we're going to not start there. Let's start over here on the right. And so the first thing here is you're going to have model choice, and you're going to see some different models than you've seen on the other agent tool. And depending on where we're at in time and what things your company has turned on, you might see different things than I have here, right? That's pretty normal. I feel like everyone kind of sees a slightly different list of models. But at the end of the day, you've got some pretty good models, right? 5.5, 5.6. There's Sonnet 5, there's Opus 5, right? Like these are good models. Now remember, when you're choosing the model though, it's going to drive your credit usage, right? The bigger the model, the more credits it's going to use, the more expensive it's going to be, right? Everything about this new harness is using credits. So Opus 5 is the default. It's probably, I don't know if Opus 5 or 5.6 reasoning, like one of those two is one of the most expensive. Sonnet 5 is probably, it was the default there for a minute. So, choose the model appropriately. And so now why the model matters, right? Like if you ever use Copilot and Cowork, you've always thought like, man, Cowork does a lot more, right? You've asked Copilot to do something, it fails. It's like, I couldn't do it. If you ask Cowork to do something, it just goes, right? It has that tenacity. Tenacity is how I always explain that. And so that tenacity is what they've brought to the new harness, the new orchestrator, the new thing under the hood that makes these agents work. And so what this is saying is, hey, that tenacity is being driven by which one of these models. But you're going to find that these agents are a lot more robust. They're like a dog with a bone, right? They're going to go and get your thing done. They're not just going to be like, I tried, I gave up, right? Which the old agent building experience was kind of like to do that, right? It's like, oh, I tried, it didn't work. You should ask me something else. And so speaking of this thing acting a lot like Cowork, the same way that we use skills over in Cowork, we have the ability to use them here, right? And so skills are a universal standard. They are the same in Claude, they're the same in Copilot, they're the same in, if you pull them into OpenAI, there's, I don't know, hundreds, thousands, millions of tools out there all using the SKILL.md format. It's become a universal standard. Now, if you're not familiar with skills, the idea of skills, I always think of them as a recipe. So if there's a standard set of steps that you do every single time, right? If you think about it, you go into and you prompt like, hey, rewrite this PowerPoint deck and use this branding, use this font, use these colors, use these images, right? Like, and you write out all of those things of how you want to do it. But every time you build a PowerPoint deck or a Word document, you want to have that same brand guideline applied, that same brand recipe. That's what a skill is. Now, skills can be a lot more complicated than that, but if you're asking me what a skill is, that's where you should start. It's just the idea, it's a set of steps you want to be repeatable. And so this is where we get a lot of our leverage out of tools like Cowork, and we can now bring those same exact skills over here. So for example, if we jump over to my Cowork, when you land here, right, over here on the left, you have this option for customize. And so if you go to skills, this would show you any skills that you had previously done. If you've never built a skill, look up there. I'll put a link to one of the videos I have on building skills, kind of getting started with them. But basically think of it like I went through the first time and I did all the branding for a PowerPoint. And then when I was done, I said, hey, will you package this branding guidelines up into a skill so I can just have the same stuff applied all the time? Boop, it did it for me. And so right here, you can see that I have the brand guide. If you click on this, you're going to then see, here's the instructions, right? The recipe, all the things that it does. And even cooler is down here, like when I did it, I said, hey, here's some standard logos that we use at PowerApps 911. I want you to also use those. And it's like, cool, no problem. So very, very powerful use. Now, when you're here, if you're like, oh man, I want to use this same branding, right, over in Copilot Studio, you can. Now, if you hit the ellipses here and want to click on download, this would only download the recipe, right? The SKILL.md, the markdown file that says, this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do. But all of those logo files would not get packaged even though they're part of it. So if you have files or support things or other, sub skills, things like that, then you're going to have to manually package that. So if I jump over here to my little folder, if I go onto my OneDrive and my documents folder, and then I scroll down here, we're going to have Cowork. And then inside of Cowork, you're going to see skills. And so here are all the skills that I built. There is my brand guide. Let's open it. And so in this folder, you see skill.md and all the different logo files that I use to create PowerPoint decks. Okay, so if I want to take this to Copilot Studio, which you probably do, then what I want you to do is just highlight all this, right? Make sure you're in this folder, right click, and then you're going to say compress to zip file. And now we have that. And so I will call it mybrand.zip. That's probably bad. I should call it brand guide, right? Let's just call it the right thing. So we'd call it brand-guide.zip. I don't think you have to name it right, but it's probably a good idea. Okay, so now that I have this file, now if we go back over here to Cowork, I can simply go here to skills and say upload. Don't click here. I wish it worked. You have to click here. And then if we look in my folder here for brand guide, there's that brand guide zip. Double click it, and it's going to save that skill. And after a few seconds, it just drops us here, and boom, we have the brand guide. Right? We can click on it, and we can see all of the instructions here, right? So, and once again, we're not going to get into like how you build these, but I want you to understand that they are completely reusable. The other thing I want you to know, right? So let's X out of there. If you don't have a skill and you're just starting here, we could hit plus, and we could have said create from blank. And so then you would have given it a name, right? Brand guide, description, right? So this is when, use this anytime the user is asking to make the deck look like the company colors or to make any type of asset that they want to share, right? You would just find the descriptions, and then down here, you could work your way through writing the instructions. Pro tip, instructions are probably a pain to write. Like if we go open this one real quick, let's go look at this real quick. And if you look, if we scroll down here, there is 170, 180 lines, 182 lines of instruction, right? You don't want to type all that out. So what you want to do is you want to use an AI tool. I went and used Copilot and said, hey, I got to build a skill to do the branding. Ask me whatever questions, whatever information you need from me, and then build me a skill. So it prompted me on like our company color, company font, those type of things. And then I said, there's your answers. And it wrote all of this, right? You do not have to be the one that writes this, but you can. And these skills are important. Like if you're thinking about things like, I used to do this in a topic, right? A pre-described motion, a recipe that I want to run. Maybe that's going to be a skill this time around. So it doesn't have to be a skill you created for other things. It can just be a skill. But if you've got skills like this branding one that does what you want, then bingo, bango, it's real easy to pull those in, right? So skills, huge win for us in this new design. Hey, if you're enjoying this, remember all of this stuff that we're talking about right now, this comes from our engagements with actual clients, whether it's training them how to do this stuff or building it for them or co-building it with them, right? We have those services over here at PowerApps911.com. So if that can help, click on the little link somewhere up there on the screen and connect with us, and I will be happy to get on a call with you and tell you how we can help solve these problems for you, so you don't just have to sit here and watch hours and hours of videos and then figure it out yourself. All right, back to the video. Tools, right? Hit the plus here. These are very similar to exactly the same as the tools that we have on the other side, the old way of building agents, right? Like if I want to build, here you go to SharePoint. So there's a SharePoint MCP server, then there's all of these same skills, right? All those same, or not tools, these are all the same tools, not skills. But these are the same tools we've been using in PowerApps and Power Automate and Copilot Studio for umpteen years, right? Like if we say, let's go down here to get items. Let's just add that in there so we can see what this looks like, right? We'll say add. And so then now that tool is there, what you want to do is you have to click on it. And so then now you need to work your way through your name and description. And then a bunch of other things, right? But the name and description matter a lot because this is how your agent's going to know to do it, right? So for example, if this was for getting items from the inventory list, then you might change the name from get items to get list of inventory, right? Or get inventory data, something to that effect, something that makes it pretty obvious because the agent's going to decide when to use this using that orchestrator, right? It's going to figure out, oh, I need inventory stuff. Look, I have a tool that does that. And it'll call this tool. So a really strong name and description goes a really long way here. If your agent's not acting well, it's not using this tool when you want it to, most likely your name and description are bad. Okay, so set your name and description. Authentication, just like we had before, do you want it to authenticate as the person using the agent or you, the person building the agent? Make your decisions there. Inputs. Now this is the same inputs that we've always had. The UI is a little bit different. So for example, the site address, well, that should be a value, right? So we're gonna hit value. And then what you need to do is you need to click into here and then you need to say new. And then now you'll see the little drop down, right? So a little extra clicking there, but then, now we could say, oh yeah, I want the PowerApps video site and save. And so then now it's going to call that site. And then for the list name, same type of thing. We'd go here to value, we'd hit the select, we'd say new, and then it should show you the list of tables. And so then there is my lovely employees table. And then we'd hit save. Now then when it comes to filling out, do you want to have a filter query? Do you want to have an order by, top count? So same thing, right? You're going to have to configure these, whether it's with hard-coded information, that's a value, or AI. And if you want, like the filter query to be AI generated, then you'd leave this at AI and then you'd write a good description, right? Generate an OData query in the pattern of column name equals this value that you prompted the user for, right? Like you would start to lay that stuff out. Or if you don't, when this tool gets called, it's going to ask the user for itself, right? So a lot more building logic there. Like we've covered that in some other videos in the past, but I want you to understand like really the little bit of a UI change here. Other than that, a lot of this works the same way as you did before. Output, same type of thing. By default, it's basically returning all the outputs. Different tools are going to have different inputs and different output options. So always explore. Like this one just outputs the whole record, the whole table of data that it returned. So, not a lot there for you to worry about. So we'll say done. But remember, everyone's going to have something slightly different. So check those out as you go. Okay. So that's tools, right? And you can add as many, or you have as many skills as you want, you have as many tools as you want. So if you wanted to, send emails, right? We'll click in here. And then we have to choose. Do we want to use send an email because we want to be very prescriptive? Or do we want to use the mail MCP server that knows how to send emails? We just add it and it kind of solves the problem for you, right? Like, once again, another topic for another day, but you do want to at least be aware that there's multiple ways to do a lot of this stuff. Now on knowledge, by default, you can see that it's automatically saying, hey, this agent has access to the whole web, so it can search all websites. What it really means is it can use Bing to find information from the different websites. If you don't want it to search the web, which a lot of times you don't, you can turn that off. But if you hit knowledge plus here again, then you're going to see, we could add public websites directly. Maybe I only wanted to search training.poweraapps911.com. I can plug it into OneDrive for Business, SharePoint. And if we hit advanced, right, they don't have anything here, but I expect that to show up pretty quick. If we were to choose SharePoint, you're going to get a very similar, almost the exact same interface you've had before, right? We can say, put our URL here, or we could browse and then start poking around, right? Like there's my PowerApps 911. No, that's the FT one. There's my PowerApps videos. Have the same logo. That's bad. But so then there's all the different libraries that I could use. So if I wanted to use employee docs or something like that, right? So this very similar interface for pulling in knowledge that we've had before. So be sure to use the knowledge correctly, or not correctly, but as it makes sense for your app, right? You can also, if you want to directly upload a file, so if you had a PDF that you want this thing to answer questions off of, it doesn't live somewhere else, just upload it here directly. You have that option. Remembering that if the file is uploaded directly, security is not honored. Anyone has access, the agent has access to the document, that's what I should say. Whereas if you upload it to SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, then it's going to use the user that's using the agent's credentials to get the data. So they're only going to get results back from data they have access to. So just be a little thoughtful there, okay? So we can cancel out there. Connected agents. So this is the ability to bring in other agents. And so, the whole agent-to-agent calling type of thing. So for example, I've built a couple of agents now, and so I could pull in one of these and attach it. And then that way, this agent, if it needed the child agent, it could take advantage of it. Once again, a whole nother story. I mostly just want to highlight here that we have the ability to connect in agents as we start to build more complex solutions. And then the last one here, memory. So this one is new to us, right? It's still in preview. It's one of the few parts that's still in preview here. But the idea then is that this agent will have a sense of memory of what I've done with it in the past. And so, for example, I can start to develop, that. Like maybe the agent is all about filling out reports, and it depends on what region I'm in, right? So when I first come in, I'll be like, hey, what region are you in? I'm in, Cincinnati, Ohio. So I'm in the, I don't even know, Midwest region. And so once I do that, right, I can say, hey, remember that. So the next time it wouldn't have to ask me because it would know, it would start to learn things about me, right? So we've seen memory a lot in Copilot and ChatGPT and all those type of tools. So hopefully memory is not a foreign concept to you here. But the idea that now this agent will develop its own memory, right? And that memory is going to be tied to this particular agent is very cool, right? Like I haven't played with it too much, but the quick looks have worked. The fact that it's still in preview, you don't want to bank everything on a preview feature quite yet, but I bet pretty quickly they get that one to GA because it seems to be working pretty well. And then kind of end up here, right? We have instructions. And so instructions, this is where you're going to tell your agents what its purpose is, right? Your job is building PowerPoint decks. When you get asked to build a PowerPoint deck, call the brand guide skill, right? Or your job is to go get information about a bunch of employees. Use the SharePoint get items skill, which hopefully you gave a better name than that, right? But the instructions here is where you shape your agent's behavior. It could also be the personality, right? I always like to do things like include a dog joke or pun. But you could be like, hey, talk like you got a stick up your backside, whatever works for you. You have options here, but the instructions is kind of where you tell the agent what its purpose in life is. And then you give it guidance. You don't want to be hyper specific with it, but the general idea, you make PowerPoints. If you get asked to make a PowerPoint, call the brand guide, right? That's the type of stuff you want to put in your instructions. So once you're happy with it, you can click here on preview. Preview is then going to let you start to use it. Keep in mind when you're doing this, right? I thought this was probably cool, but if we start to do things here, right? And honestly, you can figure it out without it. We'll just say something like this. Create me a 5-slide PowerPoint deck about the employees that you get from Get Items. Slide 1 should be intro. Slide 2 is the who is Shane. Slide 3 and 4 employee info. And slide 5 is the thank you. Now, those instructions are very specific because we didn't configure anything on their side, right? We didn't give it any instructions. We didn't set up a good name and description. If we had done a better job over there, then we would not have to be so specific. So right? This is not meant to talk about how to build right. Like I did not build this one correctly. It was about showing you the pieces, but I wanted you to see here because what I want you to also note is that here now they can start to, as you're building this, right? We're in the preview, I can get items. I see all this nerdy detail about what is happening. If you click up here on the top and say in user preview, then right, it doesn't overwhelm them with all the technical detail. So that's a really cool toggle if you want to see what the users are doing versus what you need the information to debug and see what's happening under the hood. Now, keep in mind, one of the big changes with this new harness is that it is all tied to Copilot credits. And everything that we do is tied to Copilot credits. So this preview that I'm running, right? I'm spending $1 on my credits to show you guys this running, right? Everything that you're doing in the build phase, the preview phase, anytime that you're making the agent go and run and think, it is going to charge you for that, right? So keep that in mind. That is a billing change. The old one didn't bill for usage inside when we were doing the building stage. And then the other one also, depending on if you had an M365 Copilot license and what scenarios you're covering, some of your license usage could be covered by that license. This one, all credits all the time, okay? Want to make sure we're all on the same page there. Now, it's still working. Once again, we could turn this back over here. We can see a lot more of what it's doing. Like it pulled in the brand guide. Obviously, this is where it pulled in the skill. It's redoing the thing. All right. And so now the deck is done. And then now if we want to click on the PowerPoint deck, right, let's click right here and let's just open the file. And look at that. Purple, it's branded. There it pulls in the same Shane intro slide every time because the brand guide told it and it had a copy of that slide. Here's the fake employee information that we pulled in. And then there's our thank you slide, right? Like, that's really good. And if you ever try to do anything like this with the old harness of Copilot Studio, you couldn't, right? This was literally not possible. So hopefully you appreciate how awesome that was and how quickly you were able to build it, right? Because we had the brand guide skill. I built the brand guide, months ago. I just use it all the time now. Like, why would I reinvent the wheel? No point. It also has an evaluate section here. So if you wanted to set up test sets and have it run different tests against your thing, right? So you did standardized testing with your agent, the evaluation portion also in preview, but is already available. And then monitor, let's hit save real quick. Make sure you save, right? Like there was no auto save going on. Let's go back over here to my list of agents. And so make a blog is another one that I built in this, right? Look, there's my brand guide. So there's preview, evaluate, monitor is the last one I wanted you to see. And so monitor, this is where you can start to get, see what's going on in your sessions, your billings, that type of stuff, right? So, but that's all of the tabs, right? There's not the dozens of tabs we had in another one, right? Like I'm not cheating you out of anything. I'm showing you all of it. Over here on the publish, right? If you hit the little drop down here for publish, this is where you can choose to publish to a demo website, web app, Teams or Microsoft 365. That's where we're building most of these agents for today. And so actually, let's go back to the one we haven't touched before. Let's go back here, agents. There's our demo agent. All right, so we're happy with the PowerPoint it made. So let's hit the drop down here. And so then we're not going to do a demo website because we have authentication, so you can't do a website. All right, if you wanted to embed this inside of a web app, there's the code. More likely, you're going to want to go here. And so, what do I want to do? I want to, do I want to make this agent available in M365 Copilot? Do I make it available just only in Teams? Right, we want to do all that. So we're going to say save and publish. Okay, so after a minute or two, it did take a minute or two. It published. And so that publishes now, you can see, right, the channel's enabled and all these other features light up. And so, for example, we can edit the details, right? You can change some different stuff in here. We're not trying to go through all this, but I just want you to see it's all here. Your availability options, right? Different ways to get it out. And then, if I want to see it in Teams or M365, let's go see it in M365. Boom, there it pops up. And so then now if we say add, there's our demo agent. And so we could do the same thing, right? We could ask it to build our PowerPoint deck the same, use that same prompt that we did earlier. Now, remember, once again, right, let's cancel out of here, you should have instructions. I didn't have instructions, right? You should have a better rename here. I was just trying to show the pieces, but do a good job when you're actually building agents for more than just proving out how these pieces work. And the last thing I want to talk about today is, one of the challenges that we, like every other company in the country, are having right now is this whole idea around Cowork and Cowork credits, and like, how are we going to make that available without breaking the bank? And so one of the ideas that I had late last week that I'm going to share with you guys right now is, there are things that I want people to do in Cowork, and I want them to do as many times as they need, because I know that we are doing those well and profitably, right? Like they're good things for us as a company to do. There's other things people want to do in Cowork that may or may not be a good idea. So I've given them credits to kind of figure that out. But when they run out of credits over here figuring out things, I don't want to stop them from doing these things. So what if instead of saying, okay, how do I give them more Cowork credits? What if those repeatable things, instead of saying, hey, here's a skill to use that, which is what we're doing today, what if I go and build a Copilot Studio agent, right? This is that same underlying tenacity model. You can use the same skills. What if I built that functionality as an agent, right? The generator for this content that they need to do over and over again that I want them using it for. What if we make that an agent, right? Because I control the cost of the agent, and the credits, that is not tied to the users, that is tied to the company. And I've said, hey, you can have as many of those as you want. So I think there's a lot of interesting ideas here that, this used in conjunction with Cowork for those repeatable business processes, instead of trying to push skills to 50 people and be like, hey, all of you use the XYZ skill when you need it, build an agent that has that same XYZ skill right here, give them all access to the agent, and then they can get those same outcomes, right? And I've started testing some of this. I actually did the whole PowerPoint example, right? Because that's one of the things, right? Applying our company branding to files. And so if I can just have an agent that, takes a deck or a Word document or whatever and spits out a branded version, then anyone can use it. And if marketing wants to change the branding and how the decks look, they just come in here and change this, and everyone just uses the same agent. I don't know. I think there's something really interesting here. All right, so that's everything I've got for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Questions, comments, leave them below. Remember, we can help you with this. If you want me helping you building agents, training people how to build agents, understanding the difference between Copilot, Cowork, Scout, Copilot Studio, old way, Copilot Studio, new way, building it in Foundry. We have all of those services to help you. Just, leave me a comment, hit us up over www. How many W's do we have? PowerApps911.com, and we'd be happy to help. All right, with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day.